Listen, somebody really needs to start running a betting pool on how many more famous faces are about to bail on this country before the next Diddy bombshell drops. Because if you have not been paying attention to what just happened with Cassie, you are missing the loudest silent move of the entire year. If you guys don't know, a brand new court filing just leaked out, and Cassie quietly confirmed in black and white that she is gone, she is overseas, and she has no plans whatsoever of putting her feet back on American soil. And now, out of absolutely nowhere, Rihanna has stepped into the chat with a reaction that has the whole internet shaking. I'm going to break down every single line of this thing. I'm going to walk you through what Cassie actually wrote in those documents. I'm going to explain why Rihanna's 8 little words just lit a match on the entire narrative. But before we get into that, I want you to lock something into the back of your brain as we go through this. Cassie is not just a witness. Cassie is the witness. The whole federal trial revolved around her testimony, her tapes, her timeline, her trauma. She is the woman whose name single-handedly cracked the empire open. So when somebody like that quietly packs up her family and ghosts the country she built her entire life and career in, that is not a vacation. That is not a relocation. That is a survival move. And the fact that Rihanna, of all people, somebody who almost never wades into other people's legal mess, decided to publicly back her play, well, that tells you everything you need to know about how serious people in that world actually think this situation is. Anyway, let's get into it. First, let me set the stage so nobody is lost, because there are people who are just now tuning in and they think this Diddy chapter is over. It is not over. It is barely the second act. Sean Combs walked out of that courtroom with a partial win. The prosecution did not get everything they wanted, and a chunk of his fan base went online dancing like he was completely cleared. He was not. He is still tangled up in a mountain of civil suits. His civil exposure is arguably worse than the criminal exposure, and Cassie is sitting at the absolute center of that civil mountain. She is the original domino. Every other plaintiff in every other case is essentially building on top of the foundation she laid down when she filed first. So you tell me, if you were the woman whose name kicked off the biggest takedown in modern entertainment history, would you feel completely safe walking around your old neighborhood in New York? Would you feel safe pulling up to a coffee shop in LA? I'll wait, because clearly Cassie answered that question for herself a long time ago, and the answer was a very loud, very quiet no. Now here is the part that has the entire internet doing somersaults. According to the new court documents, Cassie literally writes, and I want you to hear this slowly, "I reside outside of the United States. I do not intend to move back to the United States." Read that one more time in your head. She did not say, "I am traveling." She did not say, "I am taking a break." She did not say, "I am visiting family abroad." She said, "I reside outside of the country and I have no intention of coming back." That is legal language. That is locked-in language. That is the kind of sentence your attorney lets you sign only when you mean every single syllable. And then on top of that, she clarifies that while she is still a citizen of the United States, she is no longer a resident of the state of California. Translation, do not look for me here, do not serve me here, do not expect me at any cute LA event, do not put me on any guest list. I am gone and I am gone. Now, what is wild is last summer, she was still in New York. She was physically present. She was on the stand. She was giving testimony in front of a federal jury. 8 months pregnant, by the way, while the most powerful man she had ever known stared at her from across a courtroom. So between then and now, something or somebody convinced her that even American soil is not soil she wants under her feet anymore. And we are supposed to just scroll past that like it is normal? No. Pause. Take a breath. Think about the kind of fear that has to be operating in your nervous system to make you uproot your husband, uproot your babies, uproot your entire support system, and move to a country where the language might not even be yours just to feel like you can sleep through one full night. That is not paranoia. That is pattern recognition. Because remember, Cassie did not just testify about one bad night. She testified about a decade of alleged control, alleged surveillance, alleged consequences for anybody who stepped out of line. So when a woman who lived inside that machine for over 10 years tells you she does not feel safe in the same country as the people connected to that machine, you do not argue with her. You take notes. And apparently, Rihanna took notes too. Okay, let's get into Rihanna's reaction, because this is the moment that turned a sad story into a global headline. Underneath an article reporting that Cassie had moved abroad, Rihanna typed 4 words. 4 words. She wrote, "I don't blame her." That's it. That's the whole statement. No long speech, no press release, no public relations spin. Just 4 words, and somehow those 4 words said more than 1,000 sympathetic tweets ever could. Now, I need you to understand who Rihanna is in this context. Rihanna is not somebody who jumps into Diddy discourse. Rihanna does not pick fights online. Rihanna doesn't even respond to her own scandals half the time. She lets her silence do the work. So for Rihanna to break that silence, to literally type and post a public reaction underneath an article about Cassie fleeing the country, that is a deliberate, calculated, fully intentional message. She is not commenting by accident. She is co-signing. She is telling Cassie in front of the whole world, "I see you, I get it, and I would do the exact same thing if I were you." And here's the layer underneath the layer. Rihanna has been in the industry since she was a teenager. Rihanna has been in rooms that the rest of us will never even see photos of. Rihanna has seen the inside of that machine from a vantage point most of us cannot fathom. So when Rihanna says, "I don't blame her," she is not speaking as a fan. She is not speaking as a casual observer. She is speaking as somebody who has stood close enough to that world to know exactly what Cassie might be running from. Do you see what I'm saying? That is not just a sympathy comment. That is testimony in plain clothes. Now, before anybody runs to the comment section trying to argue, let me address the obvious question. Does this prove anything? Does Rihanna's comment prove that Cassie is in danger? No, technically not. A comment is a comment. But here is the thing. You guys keep wanting receipts, and you keep ignoring the receipts that are literally being handed to you. A grown woman with babies and a successful career does not abandon her home country for a thrill. A global megastar like Rihanna does not casually wade into a defamation-adjacent topic for clout. These 2 women are operating with information, and that information is making them move in the same direction. When 2 people who know the room start running for the same exit, you do not stop and ask if the room is on fire. You run too. Anyway, let's keep going, because Cassie said something else in that filing that nobody is talking about loud enough. She said she would prefer that any future proceedings happen in New York because her legal team is based there. On the surface, that sounds like a logistical detail. It is not. It is strategic. It is the kind of detail your lawyer slides in to make sure that if she ever has to come back for a court date, she is coming back into a controlled environment with her people, her attorneys, her witnesses, her plan. She is not coming back to wander around her old life. She is coming back, if she has to, for war, and then she is leaving again. That is not the energy of a woman who feels safe. That is the energy of a woman who has been told, possibly off the record, that there are still people circling. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know exactly who those people are, because I do not have that information, but I will tell you what we do know. We know that there are individuals connected to that entire orbit who have not been charged. We know that there are people whose names came up in testimony who never had to take the stand themselves. We know that there are entire branches of this story that the public has not seen yet, and likely will not see for years. Cassie sat in that courtroom and looked the network in the eye. She knows who was in those rooms. She knows who handled what. She knows whose phones rang and who showed up when something needed to disappear. So if her legal team and her family decided that the safest play is an entire ocean between her and that orbit, who exactly are we to second-guess that? And here is where it gets even more interesting. People online started doing the math, and the math is not mathing in a comfortable way. Cassie reportedly received a very, very large financial settlement from Sean Combs when she first filed her civil suit back in late 2023. We are talking life-changing, generational wealth, never have to clock in again money. So you have to ask yourself, why would a woman with that level of financial security choose to leave the country instead of buying a private compound, hiring private security, and living quietly somewhere in the States? You can buy a lot of safety with money like that. You can build walls, hire teams, lock down every digital footprint, and yet she still chose to leave. That tells me her advisors looked at the threat model and decided that no amount of American security is enough. Let that sink in. The richest, most protected version of Cassie still does not feel safe inside the country. That is a sentence we are going to be revisiting in 5 years when more pieces come out. Now, let's talk about the elephant in every group chat. The fans of Sean Combs, and yes, that fan base still exists, have been online trying to spin Cassie's move as something else. Some of them are saying she is just being dramatic. Some of them are saying she is hiding because she does not want to be cross-examined again in upcoming civil trials. Some of them are saying she took the money and ran, and now she is laughing on a beach somewhere. And to all of those takes, I am going to be very polite when I say this. Make it make sense. A woman who is hiding from the legal system does not file a court document publicly declaring her new residential status. A woman who is hiding from accountability does not tell the judge exactly where her legal team is and how she plans to appear in proceedings. Cassie is not running from the court. She is running from something the court cannot protect her from. Those are two completely different sprints, and if you can't tell the difference, you are not paying attention. You are just defending a man. Okay, let's bring this back to Rihanna for a second, because I want to spend more time on that comment. I don't blame her. 4 words. Let's break them down individually because every single one of them is doing work. The word I is important because Rihanna is putting her own name and face on this. She did not send it through a friend. She did not subtweet. She used her own first person. The word don't is important because it is a negation. It is her actively pushing back against any narrative that might criticize Cassie for leaving. The word blame is important because that word implies there is something to be blamed for, which implies there is a reason Cassie left, which implies that reason is valid. And the word her is important because Rihanna is centering Cassie as a person, as a human, as somebody whose decision deserves respect rather than scrutiny. 4 words. 4 perfectly chosen words. That is not a casual comment. That is a masterclass in saying everything by saying almost nothing. And the internet caught it instantly. Within hours, that comment was screenshotted, reposted, reacted to, dissected on every platform you can name. Because the world knows what Rihanna's silence usually sounds like, and the world knows that her breaking that silence means something is rattling underneath all of this. When the quietest one in the room finally speaks, you stop scrolling, you listen. Now, here's a question I want to throw out to you. Who is going to be next? Because once one big name publicly stands behind Cassie, the floodgates tend to crack.
It is human nature. Other artists, other industry insiders, other women who have stories of their own and have been sitting on them out of fear, they look at Rihanna, they look at Cassie, they look at the receipts, and they start doing risk calculations of their own. Maybe somebody who has been silent for 15 years sees a path forward. Maybe somebody who tried to come forward years ago and got buried in lawsuits decides to try again. Movements do not happen all at once. They happen because one person stands up, and then another, and suddenly the silence is louder for the people staying quiet than for the people speaking out. And let me say one more thing about Cassie, because I do not want this entire conversation to be framed only as Cassie the victim, Cassie the witness, Cassie the symbol. Cassie is a full human being, with a husband, with children, with dreams that have nothing to do with the worst chapter of her life. She is trying to build a future where her kids grow up without the shadow of any of this hanging over their dinner table. She is trying to be a wife, a mother, an artist, a person who gets to go to the grocery store without somebody filming her. She is not just a courtroom file. She is a woman, and she has earned every single quiet day she can collect from here forward. So when she packs up her family and crosses an ocean to find that quiet, I think the only correct response from the rest of us is exactly what Rihanna said. We don't blame her. Period. Now, I'm going to say something a little controversial. There is a reason this story is hitting harder than the usual celebrity headline cycle. It is hitting hard because somewhere deep down, every single one of us recognizes a pattern in it. We have all known a person who finally walked away from a bad situation, and the rest of us looked at them and said, "You waited way too long." We all know the friend who finally left the toxic relationship, the coworker who finally quit the awful job, the family member who finally cut off the person who had been hurting them for years. The pattern of Cassie's exit is the most human pattern there is. It is what happens when a person finally decides their peace is worth more than their proximity to the people who took it. And the only difference here is that her exit happens to involve federal court documents and a passport stamp instead of a few moving boxes and a new phone number. The shape is the same. The instinct is the same. The relief on the other side is hopefully the same. Now, let's address something the headlines barely touched: the settlement money. Yes, Cassie reportedly received a massive payout from Sean Combs, and yes, the public conversation around that payout has been complicated. Some people want to frame the money as if it is a clean ending, like she got her bag and the story is closed. But money does not undo a decade of alleged trauma. Money does not erase memories. Money does not stop the panic attack that hits you at 3 a.m. when you hear a sound that reminds you of something. Money is useful, money is necessary, but money is not closure. So if anybody in your comments section tries to argue that Cassie should just be grateful and shut up because she got a check, I need you to politely close that conversation. Settlement money is compensation for harm, not a permission slip for the harm to be forgotten. Okay, let's pivot for a moment, because I want to talk about the legal angle. By formally declaring in court that she is no longer a California resident and no longer a U.S. resident, Cassie is doing a couple of very smart strategic things. First, she is establishing on the official record exactly where she is not, and how she can be reached. That protects her from any future accusation that she was hiding from court orders. Second, she is signaling to opposing counsel in any future civil proceedings that they cannot just casually summon her to a deposition in Los Angeles whenever they feel like it. Third, she is potentially shifting which jurisdiction her future legal moves take place in, which her attorneys clearly already prefer to be New York. This is the work of a very experienced legal team. This is not somebody panicking and packing a suitcase. This is somebody who has been planning this exit for months, possibly more than a year, with lawyers, financial advisors, and security consultants. And I'll tell you what else this tells you. It tells you that Cassie's team believes the civil saga is far from wrapping. If they thought all of this was about to wrap up neatly, there would be no reason to embed a permanent residential change into a court filing. The fact that they are baking her overseas status into the official record means they are preparing for years of additional legal back and forth. Civil suits, depositions, subpoenas, motions, appeals. She is positioning herself for the long, slow war, not the quick skirmish. That tells me there is a lot more story coming, whether the public is ready for it or not. Now, let me come back to Rihanna one more time, because I am still not done with those 4 words. Here's something a lot of people missed. Rihanna did not post her comment in a place where it could easily be erased or argued away. She posted it where anyone could screenshot it, anyone could share it, anyone could carry it forward as a public record of her stance. She knew that. She is not new to the internet. She is not new to viral culture. She knew the moment she typed those words, they were going to travel, and she let them travel anyway. That is the part that fascinates me. That is the part where you realize this was not impulse. This was alignment. Rihanna chose to publicly stand next to Cassie in a moment when standing next to Cassie still carries social risk in certain circles. That is not nothing. That is loyalty in plain language.
And I want to be careful here, because I am not trying to drag any other celebrity who has not spoken up yet. People have their own reasons. People have their own contracts, their own labels, their own private fears. Speaking out comes with a cost, and not everybody can afford that cost today. But I will say this: the names of people who do speak up, and the names of people who stay silent, all of those names are being noted, not just from fans, by the women in those industries who are still trying to decide whether they can ever come forward themselves. Public solidarity from somebody like Rihanna gives those women a roadmap. Public silence from other big names tells those women that the road is still closed. So every public cosign, every public no comment, all of it is shaping whether the next survivor speaks or stays quiet. That is the weight of this moment. That is why Rihanna's 4 words mattered. Alright, now I want to zoom out because I think we need to talk about what this entire moment says about America right now. Think about this for a second. We are watching a woman who was one of the central witnesses in a federal criminal trial against one of the most powerful men in entertainment. And that woman, after the trial ended, decided that even her own country was not safe enough for her to live in. Let me say it again. The country is not safe enough. Not the suburbs, not a gated community, not a private island in the Hamptons. The country. That is a damning statement about what kind of protections survivors of high-profile abuse cases actually have once the cameras are gone. The system gave her a trial. The system did not give her safety afterward. And that gap between justice and protection is the gap that is forcing women like Cassie to disappear themselves into other continents. We should all be furious about that gap. Witness protection programs exist for criminal cooperators, but civil plaintiffs in high-profile cases occupy this weird in-between space where they are publicly known, publicly attacked, publicly threatened, but not formally protected. The legal system does not have a real answer for what happens to those women after the verdict. It just kind of hopes they figure it out. And in Cassie's case, figuring it out apparently means buying a one-way ticket and never looking back. That is a policy failure dressed up as a personal choice. We should call it what it is. Now, before I wrap, I want to address the people who are already in the comments getting ready to type something cynical about Cassie's money. I see you, I hear you, and I'm going to say this one time with love. The amount of money Cassie received does not retroactively cancel out the years of alleged abuse, manipulation, and control she has spoken about under oath. You can be wealthy and traumatized at the same time. You can have a beautiful home and still flinch at certain sounds. You can be on a beach somewhere drinking something cold and still wake up gasping at 4 a.m. Money is a tool. Money is not a cure. So please, if your only contribution to this conversation is some version of, she got paid, she should be quiet, I need you to scroll past, take a walk, drink some water, and come back when you have something more meaningful to say. Okay, let me bring this all the way home. Here is what we know. We know that Cassie has formally moved out of the United States. We know she has no intention of returning. We know she is preparing for what looks like years of continued legal action conducted from overseas, with her New York attorneys handling logistics. We know Rihanna has publicly co-signed her decision with 4 small words that hit like a thunderclap. We know the larger Diddy civil situation is nowhere near finished. We know that other voices are watching, calculating, deciding whether to speak. And we know that the system that brought all of this to light is not the same system that is going to keep these survivors safe afterwards. That part is on us. That part is on the public. That part is on every person who shares the story, who supports the survivors, who refuses to let the conversation die down just because the trial is technically over. Now, here is my question for you, and I want you to actually answer this in the comments. Who do you think is going to be the next big name to publicly support Cassie? Do you think we are about to see a wave of celebrities lining up behind her? Or do you think Rihanna is going to be the only big-name signature on that statement for now? And separately, do you think any new revelations are coming about the people who were in those rooms but never had to take the stand? I have my predictions, and I'll share them in the next video, but I genuinely want to know what your gut says first. Drop your thoughts below, let me know who you think speaks next, let me know if you think Cassie made the right call leaving, and let me know if Rihanna's comments surprised you as much as it surprised the rest of us. And as always, thank you for showing up, thank you for caring past the headline, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay sharp.